So let's get right into it. Some of you, well, I will get into it here. There I am. Want to know who I am? Well, that's me. That's my Twitter handle if anybody needs to get a hold of me. Tara and Patrick both told me that we have a lot of tweeters who constantly send out with these things. So I've taken the liberty of adding some tweetable hashtags for you as we go along, and you'll see what I mean. I'm currently the Director of Training Development for Logan's Roadhouse, and formerly I've been with the Improv Comedy Club, IHOP, O'Charlie's, and the United States Air Force, both active in reserve duty. I have built and supervised teams consisting of anywhere from 2 people to 70 people, so I do have some leadership experience there, obviously, but where I really feel like I get most of my leadership experience is I've coached 3 basketball teams, 8 soccer teams, 2 football teams, and 8 baseball teams. And if you've ever had to coach, 8-year-old soccer players, 7-year-old soccer players, coach my daughter's 8-year-old soccer team right now, and it is really like, it's hashtag like herding cats. So anything, you could write a whole book on everything I've learned from leadership I've learned from coaching my daughter's soccer team. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to take a brief leadership quiz. We'll do that together, of course. We're going to talk about the difference in management versus leadership. We're going to talk about our father's leadership climate. I was able to interview some fathers, my friends, myself, and really talk about how was it when you were working, when you were just coming up through the ranks, when you were working early on in your careers versus the difference now. Some of them are still working, some of them are retired, some of them have retired and are on to second jobs. But it's interesting to see the difference in how they used to do it and how it's done today. So then we'll talk, of course, about today's leadership climate, and then we'll talk about leading today's workforce. So let's take a little true or false quiz. After each question, I'll give you a few seconds, and then I'll tell you what the answer is. Number 1, everyone is an expert in great leadership. True or false? I'm sure many of you think this is false, but here's why I say it's true. Now, if I'd asked the question, everyone is an expert in giving great leadership, I think we would all agree that's false. We've all been around people who just weren't very good leaders. In this case, I think it's true because everyone knows when they're in the presence of great leadership. Everyone knows when they've had a leader who has exerted everything or exuded everything that they should as a leader. They've had all the traits, they've been able to motivate, they've been people-oriented, but yet still got production. We all know it. And the reason we ask this question this way is it's good that we know it because you can always refer back to it when you're trying to teach leadership. You can always say, think about a leader who did this, or think about how your last leader didn't do this and why you would want them to do it. It's nice when we think of it that way. Number 2, there's a direct link between quality leadership and market share. That answer, yes, that's obviously true. I realize after the first question, everybody thinks now all of my questions are going to be trick questions, but not true. Obviously, as you go through time and you've seen the businesses who have really taken over and really done an amazing job, it's because they've all had great leadership. You've also seen once that leadership has changed, some of those companies have failed because they didn't have that great leadership. And so I believe we all know that that's true. Leadership is both a reality and a perception. True or false? If you thought true, you are right. It is, of course, a reality in what somebody is receiving from you, but it's also a perception in what they think they're getting from you from a leadership standpoint. Number 4, great leadership takes a lot of time. True or false? Uh-oh. It's our first Switzerland question. It's actually true and false. It's true in that if you're doing it right, it's what you do all day. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're leading people, it does take a lot of time. It's exactly what you have to do all day. Even when you don't think you're leading, you're leading. If you look the other way when somebody's doing something, you're leading, it's bad leadership. So you've always got to understand that it does take all of your day. It's false, though, in the fact that there can be little leadership moments that don't have to take a lot of time. Thanking somebody for something they just did and explaining the impact within a couple of minutes, that doesn't take long, but it makes an impact on that person. So that's why we say true and false. There are no bad team members, just ineffective people at handling them. That is false. I want to make sure we understand there are bad team members. And right now, every one of you is probably thinking about somebody at your work that is a bad team member. And of course, my next question would be, if you were in my class right now, is why are those people still there? So there are people who are just, they're either going to poison the well, they just intentionally don't do good work, they do things that are not good. I'm not talking about people who need to be developed or trained differently. I'm talking about people who just shouldn't be in that position, and they need to either be promoted to guest or move to a different place, but they shouldn't be on your team at that point. An employer of choice has a much easier time filling an open slot. That answer is true, of course. And what makes up an employer of choice? That's a place where the climate, the pay, the job, the duties, everything all matches to make it a job that is desirable, that people really want. And so if you're a great leader, then you know, if you're a great leader, you have a great leader that you work for, you're going to want all your friends to come. You're going to want everybody to come and work there. That's what makes you an employer of choice. It costs approximately $3,500 to replace an employee. Yes, that is true. That's a lot of money, and it shows why great leadership is so important. If you're losing people, you can't retain them because you have a bad leader, a bad manager in place. Yeah, it's costing you a crap ton of money, and that is a technical HR term, by the way. Number 8, the generation you were born in really has nothing to do with your work ethic or perception. I think we all know that that is false. It has absolutely everything to do with your work ethic and perception. And, you know, it's easy to say, well, the kids today, they just don't work as hard. Well, guess what? Your parents thought that about you too. So it's just a matter of we have to adjust our leadership style to the people we're leading. We can't assume they can all adjust their styles, their learning styles, and their work styles to one way of leading. Number 9, you must remain consistent with the way you manage your people, ensuring you manage them all exactly the same way. That is a giant false. Everybody thinks, well, we've got standards, we've got to make sure that everybody's hitting them, and that's true. You cannot sway on your standards. However, the way you manage and lead people to get to those standards could be completely different. Patrick Earalt's one of the nicest people I know in the world. I would manage him very differently or lead him very differently than I would, say, Kurt Archambault, our other former past president. They just both have different styles, and I would lead them very differently. And by the way, Kurt's a great guy too, and I know he's probably on here. Lastly, number 10, some people are natural leaders, but others, not so much. Yep, that's true. Now, does that mean that people can't be great leaders who aren't natural leaders? No. You can train the traits, you can explain processes, you can get them to a place where they could be really good leaders. But those natural leaders, you know when you're around them. They just exude it. Whether they're even in a leadership position or not, they make you believe they're going to be a great leader someday. So why are we doing all this? Most of you are in the restaurant or hospitality industry who are on this panel, and I want to make sure we always stay focused on the bottom line. We talk about leadership because at the end of the day, we want our establishments to be successful. So what makes them successful is guests continue to come to it, or customers, depending on what business you're in. So let's talk about why they leave for a minute, and we'll tie that back into leadership. Well, 1% die. And so, you know, unfortunately, we can't do much about that. We only hope that that 1% who die are not in our restaurant, hotel, or place of work. It's a lot of paperwork. It's bad mojo. 3% move on. They just have grown up. Maybe they used to go to your establishment years ago when they were younger, but they sort of hit a different age and they just kind of move on. 4% lose interest. Maybe you haven't had any new news in a while. Maybe it's all the same old, and they just don't want to stay around. 5% follow a recommendation. They heard from somebody else how great this other place was, and they follow it. They end up loving it. Boom, they've left you. 9% are price conscious. I think we can all say that percentage may be even growing. This was from the NRA a year or two ago. 10% are chronic complainers, and I know we all have been there. We've all had that family who just did nothing but complain. They could never be pleased. It was miserable for them. And unfortunately, the 1% who die are never part of the 10% of chronic complainers. It just never works out that way. They always just keep coming back. Now, if you add all this up, you realize we do not have 100%. The scary number is this: 68% are responding to perceived indifference on the part of the service provider. So not even bad service, just indifference. And indifference is an ugly word. It's just a lack of interest, concern, or sympathy. So when there's an environment of indifference, it means that our leaders are not engaged. If you have leaders that aren't engaged, you've got team members who are not engaged. And when you've got team members who are not engaged, customers and guests are not engaged. And that means everyone's just indifferent. You can either come, you could go, don't care, I'm just here. Indifference is a direct result of poor leadership. So when we talk about management versus leadership, and people use that word interchangeably, and I did think it was interesting, when I was talking to the dads, all of them used management much more than leadership. Well, our managers would do this, or our managers have to do this, or you would expect this from your manager, versus now we really talk about there is a difference in management and leadership. And I've always said you manage things, systems, and processes, but you lead people. Hashtag, you can be a good manager, but a crappy leader. All right, feel free to tweet that one out. Management versus leadership. So managers plan and budget. Leaders chart a course providing direction. Managers organize and staff. Leaders provide guidance and counsel. Managers are always following orders. That's what they do. Whereas leaders want people to follow their example. Managers control and solve problems. They're meant to fix things, whereas leaders want to motivate and inspire to do things greater than what they can do now. Managers maintain control. Leaders create an environment of change. Managers protect the status quo. This is the way we've always done it. Leaders want to build relationships and trust so that we can be better than what we've always done. Managers write memos and procedures while leaders train and teach. Managers always follow rules and regulations while leaders question rules and regulations. Why have we always done it this way? Lastly, managers have more of a technical orientation, whereas leaders have a strategic orientation. I came from, I really like this. I saw it on a guy named Gworov's leadership blog, and I really enjoyed it. So feel free to check that out. So when you get down to it, leadership's the ability to get a group of people, no matter how diverse, to work together toward a common goal. Hashtag way easier said than done. Why is leading like flying a plane? Well, I'm glad you asked. All right, so you see your plane down there on the left-hand side and your destination up on the right-hand side. And most of us just assume the airplane takes off and they land at their destination. Well, when I was in the Air Force, I was a crew chief on F-16 planes, so I happened to learn a little bit about this. And actually what happens when an airplane takes off, it does start on a straight line. Then gets off course a little bit. So they got to make an adjustment. They try to get back on course. Well, they've overcorrected a little bit. Now they're off course again. Now we fly for a minute. Now we're back over here. Then we finally get to our destination after several courses. Here's the alarming statistic about flying. 90% of the time an airplane is off course. But with each of those little adjustments, they get back on course and they get to their destination. And that's what leadership is like. It is making small adjustments along the path to your destination to get to the final goal. That's why I've always believed it's like that. And by the way, hashtag I'm not getting on a plane now that I found out that it's off course 90% of the time. When you talk about leadership, you're really talking about power. And there's that old line, with great power comes great. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody just asked me a question on here, and I'll go back to the powers in just a second. Where does the $3,500 figure come from? That is actually a statistic that I got from Nation's Restaurant News a couple of years ago. It may actually be low, but what it included is recruiting costs. It included the cost of training, uniforms, extra personnel. In the restaurant world, it's extra food. In other words, it's the productivity that you don't have when you've got to train another person. So hopefully that gets that to you. Thanks, Nancy, for that question. All right, let's get back to our power. With great power comes great responsibility, right? And so there's really 4 types of power. There's positional power. Congratulations, you've been promoted to manager. Here's your power. Now, does that always mean that you're going to be effective in using that power? No. This power is the most abused power of any power there is. There's knowledge power. You happen to know more than anyone else at your job. And so that's really great when you've got that, when you have that knowledge and you are so specialized that you hold some of that power. And so people have to come to you to ask those sorts of things. There's historical power. You've been at your job a really long time, or you've held the keys for a really long time, and so people naturally come to you. Everybody's had that person. Oh, go ask Sally, she knows what's going on. Or go ask Henry, he was here in '96 when that first happened. That's historical power. Then there's actual power, and that's when you build teams that want to work for you through influence, respect, and appreciation. And that's the kind of power we all want. Let's talk about how our fathers saw leadership and management. During their climate, when they were in their heyday in the early days, it was, well, you tell them and they do it. That's what I asked my dad. I said, Dad, how did you make sure people did what you wanted them to do? And he said, I told them and they did it. I was like, all right. But in today's world, that's not how it feels. So how did you actually get them to want to do it? He said, I told them and they did it. That's all I know. They all said you leave your private life at home. And I know in today's world that doesn't happen. We have single parent families. We've got dual parent families that just have 2 working parents that have all kinds of issues. Your private life is now very public, and we have to, as leaders, make adjustments for that. Nobody talked back to the boss back then. You didn't question them. They said what they wanted to say, and you said, okay. This was, I got this from a couple of different fathers. Early is on time is late, and late is inexcusable. It was an ethic that they all said they had, and they had to have it or else they would not be able to keep working. We do not have this today in our work areas. Everyone is working toward the American dream back then. And of course, the American dream was retire at 55, 65, somewhere in there, white picket fence, the home, you garden and do whatever you want to do, piddle around the house for the rest of your time and enjoy your golden years. I think we would all agree that's not the American dream that is today. That's not the reality. Many people who retired are back at work. Many people understand that the American dream is a little bit different now for everyone. Some people's American dream is to retire on an island somewhere, while some of them just want to be able to afford to be retired when they're older. So basically, our father's climate could be summed up in the hashtag, do as I say and you get to keep your job. So the model was, you had a boss, your boss tells you what to do, you do it, you get to keep your job. Woohoo! That's the model. That's your father's leadership model right there. And I think all of us will definitely agree that that is not what's going on today. So what's our leadership climate? What do we have to deal with today? Well, it's a group-based mentality. It's no longer one person says something and you all go do it. Now it's everybody's got their opinions, everybody's got emotions about it, everybody wants to see what they can put in. Team members question everything. Why do we do it that way? And you know what? That's awesome. It's great when you've got an atmosphere where your team members will question the status quo. If that's happening, you're doing something right. It's a work smarter, not harder group. My father always said, you keep your nose down, you work your butt off, and hopefully you get ahead and you get to retirement. It's not that way anymore. Nobody wants that. Technology rules. Everybody's on a phone, everybody's on a laptop, everybody's on an iPad. I don't even know what kind of things are out there. For the longest time, phones just kept getting smaller. Now I feel like they're getting back to being bigger. Technology is a huge part of everything we do, and it's never going to go away. Private lives and work lives overlap. We talked about that already. When people have to make adjustments to their work schedule and their lives, you've got to be able to adjust for that. It's just because if you don't, some other company will. Companies need really good people. Get results today because you might not have tomorrow. You know, before, when you went to work someplace, you could work there through retirement. I think we all know that today the average person who starts at 25 will have had 4 jobs by the time they get to retirement at a minimum. So I actually read that in Fast Company the other day. So that's what makes these kind of statements so scary. You've got to get results today, because you know what? Nobody's putting up with it. They've got shareholders to talk to. They've got their boards to talk to. They want you to get results. Culture means everything in today's leadership climate. Whereas I asked my dad about culture, and my buddy's dad actually, and they said, we didn't really talk about the culture of a workplace. We just went to work. Hashtag, you're right, John, that is different than before. So what is culture? Why would we even talk about it? It's a particular group that has its own beliefs and ways of life that lead to a certain way of thinking, behaving, or working. Because culture is so important now to the way we do work, the way we are a team, the way we take pride in what we do. So there's common things and components of culture that you really have to know, especially if you're starting a new job. What's the common language? You need to know the mission. You need to know the values. What are the things that this company holds dear? And catchphrases. So, for example, where I'm at now, everyone in the corporate office uses the word heard. Anytime anybody says, hey, I need you to do that, the person will answer, heard. It's something we've done on our kitchen lines forever, and a lot of the people who work in the corporate office actually started out in restaurants. So heard is just a big catchphrase. You know when somebody's used that they kind of get something about our culture, about something that's going on. And I know that's a simple word, but it for whatever reason, it gives people comfort around here. Celebrate your company icons. That's people who've been around for a long time or who do special things. Those can be your icons. And there's also just things such as, again, using my company, for example, peanuts and jukeboxes are a big thing with Logan's Roadhouse. Those are icons. Those are iconic. We don't mess with those things. Those are sacred cows. Know the goals, share the results, both positive and negative, and create a learning environment if you're trying to really enhance your culture. That's an environment where mistakes are okay. We're going to celebrate them, we're going to get past them, and we're going to move on. So what does today's leadership matrix look like? Whereas when my dad and other dads I've talked to, it was all about production. It was all about what do you do at the end of the day? And in today's world, we have to have a concern for people as well. So you can see up on the left-hand side, the concern for people, it goes up as your concern goes up. And then there's the concern for production on the bottom, and it goes to the right as it goes up. So where it's, the two things meet in the middle down there at the bottom, there's no leadership. Where there's no concern for production and no concern for people, you have no leadership. You basically have nothing. If you have too much concern for people, you go up on the left-hand side, but very little concern for production. I call that the fun house. There's no work. It just equals no production. It's like, oh yeah, everybody cares, everybody really likes it and is happy, but they're only going to be happy for so long when they're not producing anything. Conversely, on the right-hand side bottom, when it's a lot of concern for production and very little concern for people, now it's not a fun house anymore, now it's a work house, which means no fun equals no retention. We're not keeping those people, and we already said how much it costs to replace people. So we've got to make sure that we balance. So if you look at the sweet spot there where there's concern for people, concern for production, right up there at the right-hand upper side of the matrix, that's team-based management culture. That's where we include the team, everybody's excited, there's a leader, but that leader listens to input and really feeds the people who are doing that, makes them feel good about what they're doing, and they get results. So they care about the people, they care about the production, and therefore they are the most successful. So how do we do it? How do we lead today? First of all, respect your people. Anytime you've ever gone to any generational talk where they talk about Generation X, Generation Y, you know, the differences in how you treat them, all of them say every generation it's about respect. So, you know, everybody talks about the millennials and they're not being very respectful. The truth is, Millennials will respect you as long as you respect them. As long as you treat them like they need to be treated, they'll treat you in accordance with the authority that you have. So just be respectful. Ask questions. Get input and buy-in. People are so much more apt to want to work for you when you ask them questions and get their input. When you say, hey, I was thinking about doing this, but what do you think about it? Give me some opinions on this. Then they have buy-in. Now they're part of the solution, as opposed to just saying, Jim, I need you to go do this. No, don't ask questions. I just need you to go do it. And there may be sometimes in emergency situations where you need to do that, but by and large, most decisions get a little input on, even if you're not listening to it necessarily, but you want to at least see if what you're doing makes sense. All right? You may not always take their input, and I always say that to people, especially when I ask large groups of people, like we'll ask our regional managers for input on topics that we may want to discuss at the next GM conference, for example. I'll say, doesn't mean I'm going to use them, I just want to know what the climate is out there. And I think they appreciate that honesty, but at least I'm asking for input. Laugh a lot, especially at yourself. If you take yourself too seriously, you are not going to gain that likability that people sometimes need with you. Now, I'm not saying being a goofball. I'm not saying be a clown, but just laugh a little bit. If you make a mistake, laugh it up a little bit. Just have fun at work. Work doesn't have to be so awful. Don't micromanage. Nobody wants to be looked over, have their shoulder looked over constantly, but notice everything. And the reason I say that is you don't have to micromanage to know details. You can look at reports. You can look at things. You can just observe the work that's going on. You can just ask simple questions. So notice everything. That way you can give feedback. That way they know that you are actually looking at everything without having to micromanage. They'll make sure they get the results for you. But really notice everything. I love to tell somebody when they did a great job on something and they didn't know I was looking. It makes them feel special. It makes them feel good. And I've got a little bit of extra buy-in now as we continue to move on towards our goals together. Do something together at least a couple of times a month as a team. And that may mean a quick meeting to make sure everybody's projects are going the right way, a quick meeting to make sure everything's going right in the restaurant. It could be just going and grabbing a cup of coffee in the break room, having lunch together every now and then. Those kinds of things build team unity, and it makes that team want to work for you as opposed to having to work for you. So don't make it false. Don't make it fake. Just do some things together. Allow mistakes. They are gold. Mistakes are only bad when you keep repeating them. But when you've made a mistake the first time, or somebody who works for you has made a mistake the first time, it's an awesome learning experience. It's a great tool for you to say, all right, nope, this isn't the way we did this. This is where we kind of messed this up a little bit. Now, help me figure out how are we going to fix it? What should we have done? And then you get them again. It's a training experience now. So allow those mistakes. They're some of the best things I've ever learned, and that I do now, I've learned because I've made a mistake at one point. Continuing on that leading today, quick thank yous mean a lot. Quick thank yous mean a lot. It doesn't have to be some big, long, call somebody out in front of everybody and really give them a plaque and all that stuff. Those things are nice, but you know what? Just a quick stop in the hallway and say, hey, I really appreciated the way you handled that. It was awesome, thanks. Or sometimes just a nice handwritten card. Nobody handwrites cards anymore as thank yous. They just go that little bit of extra length. Teach what you know. A lot of leaders are afraid to teach the things that they actually know because they don't want somebody to take their place. My thing is, how can I ever move up if I don't teach somebody to be able to take my place? So I teach what I know, and I will always do that. I will always say, hey, from my experience, here's something that's worked. You may have something else that works better for you, but I just wanted you to know this is what I've done that works. That way I'm not saying what they're necessarily doing is wrong, because it may get to the same goal, but I can at least explain to them that there might be an easier way to do it. And then learn from them. I do not know everything, and neither do you. As much as we think we do and as much as I profess to know everything, I don't. And so I'm constantly asking my guys, hey, remind me how to do this. Or, hey, can you show me what you just did on this? I have some people who are phenomenal in graphics, phenomenal in video. I'm always asking them, how do I do that? Can you show me? It shows that I'm human, makes them want to help me, and it makes them want to work with me a little bit more. So learn from them just as much as they learn from you. Be flexible with everyone's time. We live in a world today where, millennials are like, I want to get the job done, but I've got things I got to do over here and over here. And so be flexible with that. Be able, if somebody wants to come in from 6 to 3 because they love the afternoons and your business can support that, do that. It's those kind of things that keep people happy, sometimes even more so than just money. If they like their job and they like the hours they work, they like what they're able to do, they like flexibility, why wouldn't we do that if they're really great employees that can make a difference for you? Be the real you and allow others to do the same. I have always said I am kind of a goofball. I enjoy what I do. I don't know many people who actually went to school for what they do, but my degree is actually in Work Center Education Development. So I really enjoy doing this, and I like to let people see that I enjoy doing it. I have fun at work. I have fun with my people. I have fun with my bosses. I do enjoy it, and I want them to feel like they can enjoy it too. So I let people have their personalities. As long as you're getting your work done and you're doing the best work you can possibly do, I don't care if you're grumpy, I don't care if you're happy, I don't care, as long as you're not doing that to a guest or a customer, obviously, but I want you to be able to just be yourself, because that's when you're going to be able to do your best work. Feedback, 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 get it and give it often. I cannot explain to you how important feedback is. It is the lifeblood of everything we do as a leader. If you're not seeing how well you are doing in leading somebody, you've got to get the feedback. And you can't be a better leader if you don't get that feedback. Do stuff like start, stop, keep. I hand these sheets out to my team about once every 6 months and say, all right, what do you want me to start doing? What do you want me to stop doing? What do you want me to keep doing? That's going to help make sure that we as a team continue to move forward towards our goals. So get that feedback, and then I give them the same kind of feedback on start, stop, keep. It just makes it an easier way to do it. Hashtag one size fits one leadership. And I kind of want to end on that, because I do believe you've got to tailor the leadership to the people that you're leading. And a great leader will call out the traits that they need to call out from each individual, however they need to call those traits out. And so with somebody, you might have to be a little gruff. With somebody, you might have to be just as sweet as you can possibly be, and somebody is going to be right in the middle. And you, as a leader, if you can adjust, that's when you're going to be the most effective. So it's not like our fathers used to say, go in and do your job, and you listen to that boss, you don't question status quo, and you go and you get your retirement and you move on. Our fathers were also fairly miserable at work. My dad was all the time. And so my goal as a leader, and your goal should be as a leader, to get the people to get to where they need to get and enjoy it along the way. Because they're at work with you much more than they are at home. And so you've got to get that quality of life with them. If they love what they do, they won't leave you. If they love what they do, they'll work hard for you. If they love what they do, they'll get you to the end goal, which is for all of us where we need to be. So I'm now going to open it up to questions, because I was told to keep it right at about this time. And Patrick, I'm going to open it up for you.
Okay. Well, the most common question I've gotten over the last 40 minutes was people wanted to know if the webinar would be made available after this session and the PowerPoint, and the answer to that is yes. We have been recording this session, and the information will be put up on the chart website. If you go to the webinar page where the list of upcoming webinars is, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see recordings and PDF copies of the PowerPoint for all the previous webinars we've done this year. So it will be available. Takes a couple of days for us to get it all processed and put up there, but it will be available very soon. one of the questions I got for you, Mr. John, is you talk about fun at work. What are the different kinds of ways that you like to have fun at Logan's Roadhouse?
Oh, that's a great question. So for us, there's a lot of sort of joking, a lot of when we have meetings, we might do it at lunch, or somebody might bring in donuts or something like that. Those are sort of standard kind of ways to do it. I've had meetings where I've had it at a completely weird place. Like one year we did not at Logan's, but at a previous life, we went to a race car place where they do like the little stock car things. And for an hour we did that. Then we had one of their meeting rooms, and we all had this adrenaline and this high going. And then we went and we built a program that I wanted us to build. It was just a quick training program. But I wanted to get them thinking differently. I wanted to get their adrenaline up. I wanted to get them excited. And then we went and did some work, and they loved it. It was a great experience. In fact, they wanted to do it every week, but of course we couldn't afford to do that. But those are the kind of things. They don't have to be much. It could be just having lunch with each other. It could be, I used to go out at 3:30 when everybody was sort of starting to drag, and I used to yell yeehaw really loud, just for no reason at all. Just little things like that is in every group you're going to have to judge what's fun for them, and then try to find ways to do something different. I think that's the key, is not make it so that it's so regimented every day. Just do something that's a little different.
You must have fun. Okay.
Yeah.
We also got a question from Lori. You mentioned a leadership blog by Juarez. How can I locate that, please?
We will put that link on. I found it as I was searching through some other stuff, so I don't have the link for you, but I will. If you email me at johni@logansroadhouse.com, I will get you that link.
Okay. And one other comment quickly from Pete. When you were talking about leading today and allowing your mistakes, he also wanted to add, also own your own mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one thing that I forgot to say, when you do make mistakes, yeah, definitely own them and be accountable for them. But the also thing I want to say was protect your team. So like when my team messes up, I usually take the blame for that. But when they do something special or they do something great, I make sure I give them all the credit. And so I think that is really important to remember. And I think it's the reason why, people want to work for you. You're taking the blame, you're taking the brunt, because at the end of the day, it is your team. But when they do something really great, make sure you give them the credit and not take that for yourself.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, John. I repeat a comment from Lisa Euler. She says, thank you for sharing your time and your talent. And I definitely echo those sentiments.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me today. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. And for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with CHART, the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers, you can find out more about us on our website, which is chart.org, CHART.org. We do have our 90th Hospitality Training Conference coming up this summer on July 18th through the 21st. It'll be at the amazing Ritz-Carlton in New Orleans, and we had our conference there 5 years ago, and we're very much looking forward to going back. The details of the conference are on the website, including information on registering, and our early registration discount ends on June 18th. So you got about 8 more days to register and still get it at the discounted price. If you enjoyed this webinar and you want to find out more about our upcoming series, that's on www.chart.org/events/webinars. So you'll be able to see what's coming up. Our next one will be on August 12th. It's the latest, greatest trends in hospitality training and development. We do a hospitality trends survey every year with our members, and the results of that will be presented at the conference, and then we'll be going a little more in depth during the webinar on August 12th. So thank you again to John. Thank you everybody who attended. And if you have any other questions, you can follow up with either Tara or I. My email address, if you'd like it, is patrick@keepclam.com. and I'm happy to answer any questions that we didn't have time to cover today. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.